This is North Pod, a North Melbourne fan podcast, hosted by Jason Hunt.
Nick Larkey! Stevenson with his own moves. Carrington. North are in front!
Hello and welcome back to North Pod for season 2024 or season 2 of the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning back in or for tuning in for the first time. My name's Jason and we're back for another season and back for hopefully some more wins this season. Only able to react to one win last year, so hoping for more than that in season 2024. I'll get the housekeeping out of the way. If you're new here, I'd love it if you could follow me on X or Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all those social medias. I'm at NorthPod Show in most places, and I'm just at NorthPod on TikTok. It'd be great if you could follow or subscribe in those areas. I'm also quite active in the North Melbourne Football Club subreddit at Reddit, so feel free to go and check out that subreddit. Interact with a couple of people there to help me come up with the idea for this episode. I've also brought myself into the year 2015 and made a link tree. You'll find that in the show notes, just so you can easily find all my social media, all my links and those kind of things. So NorthPod on Linktree. I just want to do I know that if you're a podcast listener, you hear this nonsense all the time, but I would really appreciate if everyone that's listening could give the show a rating and or a review if your podcast app allows it. Certainly I know on Apple Podcasts you can leave an actual review, and on Spotify you can leave the 5 stars. It just really helps distribute the show and helps people find the show. So if you could do that, that would be great. I might give some shout outs to those people that leave a review on Apple Podcasts, because I'm certainly able to read those. And the other new thing in terms of housekeeping for this year, I have created a Buy Me a Coffee link. And for those of you that don't know, it's essentially just a way to donate a couple of bucks to the show. I thought if I created a Buy Me a Coffee, it would be kind of ironic because I'm absolutely not a coffee drinker. So think of it more like maybe you're buying me a vanilla Coke. That's my drink of choice. But yeah, it's just absolutely no obligation, and I fully expect that no one will. But this making the show isn't free. Certainly takes up a lot of time. So really, it's just a way, if you like the show and you want to show your support in a really small, easy way, you can follow the link in the show notes or on my link tree to hashtag Buy Me a Coffee. And you can just, send a few bucks my way to essentially keep the lights on, so to speak, because, I spend a lot of time, and obviously this is a passion of mine, but any additional money helps. So no obligation, but that link is there if you are able, or if you're interested in supporting me and supporting this show. That's all of that start of the year stuff out of the way. In terms of the podcast this year, I think there's going to be some things that are the same and some things that are different. I think even as I'm speaking now, it's only been kind of a month and a half since I recorded last, but I am feeling a bit out of practice. So if it feels a bit, or sounds a bit out of practice, you know why. But the basic show is going to be the same format. We'll do some positives, we'll do some negatives, we'll look at story of the game. I am going to do a Player of the Year award type thing, where I give, a sort of 4-3-2-1 for each game in terms of the North Melbourne players. I'm looking for suggestions for what the name of that award could be, other than just, the North Pod Player of the Year. Feels a bit boring. but I don't have any inspiration for that. So if you've got some ideas, feel free to hit me up in the comments or DM me on Twitter or Instagram, and we can chat about potential name ideas. But we're going to start that up. I know second half of the year I was kind of talking about my couple of players of the game, and I thought that could be a way to amp that up a little bit. So we'll definitely continue with the weekly shows. I am looking to maybe do a couple of additional eps, maybe fortnightly, that are more kind of audience participation. So whether that's people writing in questions or sort of feeding back the reactions to the games or what's happening at the club. I haven't quite figured out what that might look like, and it probably wouldn't be an extra podcast each week, but maybe fortnightly or every couple of weeks. So I've got some plans in the works for that. I'm certainly looking to do more audience interaction in terms of polls, so perhaps on Twitter. And if you're a Spotify listener, I can set up questions or polls for each episode that you can easily do within the app. So I'll be looking to do a little bit of that. And if you jump on Spotify for this episode, you'll be able to see a question for this app. And yeah, then in terms of just leading into the start of the year, we're sort of a month and a half, 2 months away. So we'll certainly do some previews, some predictions. Yeah, it's just some standard preseason content, but haven't had any preseason content before because I only started the podcast in round 4 of last year after 2/3 of our wins. So yeah, that's, I think, all the shenanigans out of the way. You would have seen that the boys are back in pre-season training, so there's been a bit of social media coverage about that. But yeah, let's jump into today's episode. We are going to do an over or under prediction. So it's a fairly Americanized product. I'm sure sport lovers will be familiar with it, but just to set it up, I'm going to essentially read out a statement that I've come up with or that I've had some help from some Reddit users to generate, and then I will be deciding whether or not I think the number will be over or under, and it's gonna make sense when we get started, I think. So thank you to the Reddit users Boomerstar08 and Baby_Bigfoot. Love those names. They helped me come up with a few of these. I came up with a few of myself. And yeah, we're just going to roll through, and I'll be saying, here's a statement, I think it's over or under. And then, yeah, I guess the end of the year we can circle back and see how far off I was. I might put a few of these up on Twitter as polls just so we can kind of gauge the audience. And I might post the full list over on the subreddit, the North Melbourne subreddit, so you can all join in and do your over-unders for each statement if you like. I've grouped them by, there's some team over-unders, then some player-based ones, and then some kind of fun, silly ones that we can look at the end. So yeah, let's jump right in. And if you're still a bit confused, I probably would be after hearing that explanation. Hopefully it'll make sense once we get started. So over or under, North Melbourne wins 1.5 games going into the bye. So I think we play 11 games, then we have our bye, and then we play 12 games. So over or under 1.5 wins. And you'll see a lot of them are 0.5, so that you're definitely right or wrong. So essentially, will we win more than one game in the first half of the year? We have GWS, Fremantle, Carlton, Brisbane, Geelong, Hawthorn, Adelaide, St Kilda, Gold Coast, Essendon, Port Adelaide before the bye. That's giving under. Like the Hawthorn game, we're a chance to win, obviously. Freo, we're maybe a chance. Beyond that, it's hard. Maybe the Gold Coast game. Yeah, I think maybe we win one. I think we'd be lucky to win two. And, you know, this is so early on in the year, but based on our form at the end of last year, yeah, I'm going to say under. I think we win one. I think between the Hawks, the Suns, and Fremantle, we win one of those. So I think we're under for the first prediction. Yeah, I'm going to go under. You know what? Even as I'm talking through it, I'm actually, I think I'm going to say over. I think we can win two. I think we win maybe either two of those or we snag a win somewhere else. And I think we'd go in with two wins. So I've already already changed my mind, but I'm saying over for that one. The next one is a follow up for that. So North 4.5 North Melbourne wins for the year overall under. And I think we're under because I think we've win four for the year. So I think we win two at the first half of the year, two in the second half of the year. We finished with three last year. I think we can go one better. And that's probably setting the expectations nice and low, which is nice, I think, because then you end up less disappointed. I mean, yeah, we won three last year. We won two in 2022. We won 4.5 in 2021. I do think we're on the up, but it's going to be really slow on the up. So I think four wins. I think we're under 4.5 wins. Anything over that, I think, is a success in terms of where I think we're at. If we were to win five or six, I think that's fair. That's great. So yeah, I'll say under for that one. Our ladder position is 16.5. So essentially, do I think we finish 17th or 18th or higher? I mean, the last few years we've been 17th, 18th, 18th, 17th, and I think we'll probably finish 17th again because, and again, it's fairly negative, but I can't see that there's going to be two teams that we finish above, particularly if I'm predicting that we're only going to win four games. Like maybe Richmond's really bad, maybe West Coast stays really bad, maybe the Hawks slump. But I can't see that there's two teams that, or I guess that there's two teams that win four games or less that aren't us. So I'm going to say we're under for that. I think we finish 17th or 18th. Again, it's an uplifting start to the season, isn't it? But I am a bit of a pessimist, and when it comes to North Melbourne, so I mean, who isn't as a North Melbourne supporter from the last 5 years? Let's be honest. But yeah, I think 17th or 18th. I think we're under. The next one is our percentage is 73%. So the last few years going backwards, 2023 we were 71.5, then 55.8. My God, 2022 was such a bad year. And then 70.3, 71.2. So if you take out that absolutely horrible 2022, we've been hovering in the low 70s. So the question is, can we get above 73? Yeah, I think we can. I'm going to say over. I think we don't go much over that, but maybe we could, end up with a percentage that's 74, 75, something like that. Again, it's pretty pessimistic, but if you think about that, that's say on average we're losing 75 to 100. Oh, is that the case? Yeah, I think so. Like, I could see that. I could see a situation where that's kind of a standard loss for us. So, yeah, I'll say over 73, I think. Average score for North Melbourne is 72.5. So will our average score be over 72.5? Recent history, 2023, our average score was 72, and 2022, our average score was 60.7. That year was so horrific. I think we can score more than we did last year. I think our scoring power will improve. So I'm going to say over. I think our average score will be over 72.5. I don't know how much it would improve. Like, I don't think we're going to improve 11.3 like we did last year. If we could push into the mid to high 70s as an average score, that'd be nice. But yeah, I'd be happy if our average score was, say, 75, 76. Average score against 90.5. And this is where you've got to consider what we're coming up against this year. Our defence is pretty shocking, and we'll talk more about that in the coming podcasts. But yeah, the defence is a worry with Mackay going out, with Logue being injured for a lot of the year. We certainly haven't replaced them with experience in defence. I think, yeah, we could get scored against heavily this year. So last year, the average score against was 100.8. In 2022, it was 109. Average score against 90.5. I think our average score against will be higher than that, higher than 90.5. I could even see it being higher than last year. Look, if we could get under 100, I think that'd be a success for us. Just for this year and just based on where our defence is at. I think in future years, we'd certainly want to be dropping that below 90, but yeah, I worry about our defence this year, and maybe Clarko's going to set ourselves up for some dour games potentially, but yeah, I'm going to say our average score against is over 90.5. We score 100 or more as a team 2.5 times overall under. Last year we only hit 100 once, and it was in the last game against the Gold Coast. We did have that game where we scored 99, and then it'd been a long time between drinks between us scoring 100. I think under. I think maybe we could score 100 twice and sort of push into the 90s more than we have in the past. But yeah, if we're not going to be winning many games, you don't win many games if you don't score over 100 many times if you're not winning many games. I don't even know if that makes sense, but you get the idea. We're not winning much, so we're not going to be scoring 100 most of the time. So yeah, I think under. I think hopefully we score over 100 twice, but I can't see it happening 3 or 4 times. But again, I would love that prediction to be wrong. This was one from the Reddit users. 2.5 All-Australian 44-man squad members. I am definitely going under for this. So last year we had Larkey in the 44-man squad, and he actually made the full squad. And then the 3 years before that didn't have anyone in the 44-man squad. 2019, we had Cunners and Ben Brown in the squad. And I don't believe either of them made it. I know Ben Brown didn't because he was never All-Australian, I don't think. Big call. I should check that. But anyway, like you can see that it's been a long time since we've had 3 or more in the 40-man squad. So I'm going under for that. I think Larkey is a chance to be All-Australian again. And then maybe a player like LDU or Sheasel could potentially make the squad. But if we're finishing down the bottom, it just seems so unlikely that we'd have 3 or 4 in the All-Australian squad. Even, yeah, I think Larkey's a good chance. I think LDU and Sheasel are a chance. But beyond that, it's hard to see. If Taron Thomas had an absolute stellar season, maybe that's a big time projection. That's not an expectation. 10.4 marks inside 50 per game. So the last 2 seasons, we've averaged 9.3 and 8.2 and ranked second last and last. So 10.1 is a 1.1 improvement from last year. I think over. I think our offense is going to improve. I think Larkey is going to keep clunking it, and I think there's opportunities for other smaller players like Zerha and Paul Curtis to take some marks inside 50. I can say over for that. I think we're going to have more than 10.4 marks inside of 50 per game. Not many more. Like we might average 10.7, 10.8, but I think we can do that. 10 tackles inside 50 per game. Another thing that we've been horrible at, we've been last for the past 2 years, and we've averaged 9.1 and 6.8. 10 tackles inside 50 per game. I think we're going to struggle in this area again. And I mean, the reason is we didn't recruit for this at all. It's that kind of area that we didn't address. Kane Turner's gone out of the side. He was a good tackler inside 50. Or at least he was an adequate tackler inside 50. So I don't know how we actually improve in this area other than whole team improvement. Maybe Shees goes forward and gets his tackling on. I mean, George Wardlaw was a tackling beast everywhere, so maybe he lays a few inside 50. But yeah, I'm going to say under 10 tackles inside 50, and I hope that I'm wrong. And the last team-based one, 39.5 players used for the season. So we currently have 43 listed players. We could potentially add some players either in the SSP before the season starts or in the mid-season draft, obviously in the middle of the year. I think over. So I think we'll probably use 40 or 41 players. We used 43 last year, 39 the year before that, 38 the year before that. Yeah, I think we're in that period where we're trying to give pretty much everyone a game. I'll say 40, and that's also allowing that potentially we pick up an SSP or a mid-season draftee and they get a game. There's always that one or two that's not going to game. Like, I don't know that someone like Will Dawson or Finbar Maley are going to get a game. And look, I absolutely could be wrong, but I think players like them, there's going to be a couple that miss out. But so we're not going to use 44 or 45 if we recruit a few. It's not going to be every single player, but I do think most players will get a crack at some point. So yeah, I'll say over 39.5 players used for the season. I think it'll be 40 if I had to guess an exact number. All right, let's get into the player over-unders. I certainly have not gone for every player here, so again, I took some user suggestions on Reddit, and then I've just come up with some, I think, timely ones in terms of players that need to lift or players that are coming in with expectations or exciting players, that kind of thing. Like, I certainly have not addressed everyone. So, player one, Sheasel receives 9.5 Brownlow votes. I mean, I'd love that to be over. He had 3 votes only in 2023. And obviously we didn't win much, and we're not going to win much again. And that was polling 1 vote on 3 occasions. I think you would think that he is going to be a bit like Nick Dacos in that he's got that exposure now. The umpires are going to recognise him a bit more, so he's a much better chance. But I do think him moving into a midfield or forward role probably diminishes his returns in terms of quantity a little bit, so maybe less. So I think I'm going to go under for that. I think he ends up with sort of 6, 7, 8 votes. I don't think he'll crack double figures. I mean, LDU is probably going to be, our highest vote getter, or a Simpkin or a Taron Thomas, like an out-and-out mid that's playing a lot of minutes in there. So, yeah, I'll say under. Nick Larkey kicks 62.5 goals. It's tricky because I think, obviously, he had a massive year last year, kicked 71 goals. His returns before that were 38 and 42. So I think that's where you have to keep in mind that, sure, I expect him to kick more than 38 or more than 42. I don't expect, and I kind of almost don't hope that he kicks 71 again, just because I'd love him to have some help in that forward line. And that's where we'll talk a bit later around some of the other players that might pick up some of that slack. 62.5, I'm going to go under, and I hope I'm wrong, but I think if he kicks high 50s or say 60 goals for the year, but Stevenson and Zerha and the midfielders are kicking a couple more instead, that's a win. And, maybe it's CCJ or Dersma, like someone else is picking up the slack as well. That would be my hope. So I'm going to say under, just because I think he had a breakout year, and I think maybe he kicks less goals, but our forward line functions a bit better. That's my hope, at least. George Wardlaw plays 16.5 games. I think under. He only played 8 games last year. I think he probably plays in the mid-teens game because we manage him a bit. Maybe he gets a little hemi at some point. And obviously I don't want that, but I do think he's going to need to be managed. His body does worry me a little bit. So, yeah, I'm going to say under. I hope it's over, but not by many. I don't want to see him playing every game because we know that his body is an issue, and he's obviously a rising star for us, even if he was not the rising star. So, yeah, I think under 16.5 games, but I hope it is around that mark, maybe 15, for example. And they're 15 brilliant games with no injuries. That would be wonderful. George Wardlaw lays 6.5 tackles per game. So last year he averaged 5.8 per game. So could he essentially average an extra tackle per game? I think he could. He will have bulked up a little bit. He knows what the physicality is like at AFL level now. I think he can average more than 6.5 tackles, and that would be a fantastic result for him, and I think he can do it. Zane Dersma plays 7.5 games. I don't expect him to start. Maybe my mind will be changed in a month or so once we start to see some match simulation or pracking matches. But I think he'll be eased in through the VFL because he's that taller player who's a slighter frame. But again, who knows? I think he'll play more than 7.5 games. I think he could play 10, 12 games, maybe have 2 kind of runs at it. Who knows? It's really early days, but I'll say over. Taron Thomas averages 21 disposals. So last year he averaged 19.6 and his career average is only 15, which is interesting. He hasn't played a heap of midfield. We know he's had some issues. I think over. I think he can average more than 21 disposals because I expect that he will play a lot of midfield minutes this year. Obviously, he will play some forward line time like most midfielders aren't exclusively midfielders. There's a handful that are, but he's very dangerous going forward too. I think, based on the fact that I would expect and like him to play a lot of midfield time, it's a contract year for him. I think he could average in the low 20s, so maybe a 22, 23. So I'm saying over 21, despite that being over his career average by a significant margin and higher than his 2023 average, which, when he came in, he played some sensational. So I'm hoping that continues. Jaden Stevenson kicks 30.5 goals. So last year he kicked 26 goals from 21 games. The most he's ever kicked was 38 for the Pies in his debut season when he was the rising star. That was 26 games that he kicked those 38 goals from. 30.5. Well, I think based on the fact that we've recruited Zane Dersma, based on the fact that I expect Zerha and Paul Curtis to kick more goals, potentially Braden George coming into that forward line. Like, I do worry about Jaden Stevenson's spot later on in the year. I think he starts, but I do wonder if when Dersma and George are pushing, what happens there. So I think under 30.5. Another one of those ones where I'd love to be wrong, but I think he could end up out of the side if he's only kicking a goal a game. We'll wait and see what happens there, but I do worry about him. I hope that he really turns it up and plays his best footy, but that he's a concern. Colby McKercher averages 19.5 disposals. I think I'm going to be a negative Nancy on this one. Harry Sheezel averaged 27 last year, but let's be honest, that was a career. Sorry, not a career. That was a world record. I hate that terminology for a one country sport, but that was an amazing year by a debutant. I think Colby McKercher averaging 19.5. I'm gonna say under, not by much. But if you look at what first year players average, it's not typically high 20s. That is for sure. So if he could average, say, 20 disposals, that'd be great. I think it'll probably depend on how much time he's spending in the back line versus the midfield, because I think if he does play a Harry Sheezel type role, then he could maybe hit the low 20s, but I think if he's playing midfield, there's a lot around him. I worry first year if he can get that high. So I'm going to say under 19.5 for Colby McKercher. I'd love to be wrong, and I think he plays most of the year, but I'm going to say under. Staying with the midfield, Jai Simpkin averages 25 disposals. So this one is a really interesting one because his best and fairest years in 21 and 22, he averaged 26 and 27 disposals. But last year it was a bit of a down year for him. He averaged 20.7. So can he return to his best and average 25 or more? Yeah, he's a tough one because I think he can. It's just whether or not his role, whether he's playing the same number of midfield minutes. Because if he, for example, goes back or forward, I do think that's going to limit his ability to rack up the ball, funnily enough. 25. I'm going to say over. I'm going to back him in, but I'm not mega confident. I just want to preface it with that because it's going to depend on how much minutes he's getting in the midfield, if he gets pushed out by the growing depth that we've got there. So I think I'm going to back him to bounce back and maybe average about 25 or 26, but I'm going to say over 25 disposals. I think he has the potential and he should be in our top 2 or 3 possession getters. I think LDU probably should be our top possession getter, and I think Simpkin should be second, but we'll see if that's the case. Paul Curtis kicks 19.5 goals. So he's kicked 17 from 21 games in 2023 and 12 from 15 games in 2022. I would love and I expect Paul Curtis to be averaging a goal a game. So I think I'm going to say over 19.5. I'd love to see him kick 23 goals this year. I think he was inconsistent at times last year. I think a bit of second year blues in that he's going to come out, he's going to crumb some goals, he's going to work on his strength, but not giving away free kicks, working his technique. And I think he's going to kick 23, 24 goals, and I hope that I'm right. So over for that one. Will Phillips averages 4.5 clearances per game. He averaged 3.9 last year. So could he grab an extra half a clearance a game or so? I think he can. I'm going to say over. So over 4.5 clearances. I love Will Phil and I absolutely want the best for him. I think this is a make or break year for him because we know that we've got some midfielders coming in and that's going to create competition for him. Shees and Wardlaw are, you'd probably say, at least level, if not have gone past him in terms of the pecking order. So, well, Sheasel certainly has. So I think it's a big year for him. I think if he can assert himself as that grunt work player, then that he'll be doing really well for himself, and there's a spot there for him. But he's going to need to be winning clearances. So I'm going to say over 4.5 clearances a game for Will Phil. Liam Shields plays 14.5 games. Now this is an interesting one, just based on the fact that he's the oldest player on the list. It's only Shields, Greenwood, and Core that next year are going to be over 30 or over, and Core's 29 currently. So I think Shields has turned 33 in 2024. He played 16 games in 2023. So do I think he's going to play 50? Look, I think he will, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Like, we know there's always injuries. I don't see him as being in our best 22, or if he is, he's probably our, player 22. But I also think, given we lack so much age and maturity, I do wonder if someone like Shields or Greenwood is going to play most games, just so we've got that really mature head in the middle of the ground that can, talk the players through things. So yeah, I think there's a good chance he plays 16 or 17 again like last year. I wouldn't be upset if it's under, because it probably means things are going well. And who knows, maybe he picks up a calf injury or something like he did last year, and that limits his ability to play that many anyway. But I do think there's room for him and or Greenwood at times just to be that mature head, that really mature body too. Callum Coleman-Jones averages 4.5 marks per game. Nah, under. There's not a chance. He's averaged 3 a game last year, and pretty much that's what he's averaged for his career. I would love that to be over, but I just don't know if he has enough game sense to get himself involved that much. So I'm going to say under. I hope it's an improvement from 3 per game, but I can't see him getting above 4.5 marks per game. Again, hope I'm wrong. The next one, however, I'm going to back in. So Tristan Sherry averages 2.3 marks per game. This would be a fantastic result given he averaged 1 per game last year. By golly. So I'm going to say over because I am backing Tristan Sherry in. If he can stay fit and play 20 odd games, I think he can average 3 or 4 marks a game. I think he can do that. And whilst that's not setting the bar very high, the fact that he only averaged 1 per game last year says that maybe it is. So, look, it's probably optimistic, but I know that there's so many fans that don't rate Cherry, and I get that to an extent, but I'm going to back him in this year. It's a massive year for him. We've recruited players like Taylor Goad and Finbar Maley and potentially Biggie Newen. Like, we've recruited some players that could take his spot in future years. So if he wants to stick around, this is his year, and he needs to start marking the ball if he's going to stick around. So I'm going to say over 2.3 marks for Tristan Sherry. Tom Powell plays 10.5 games. That's under. He played 14 last year, 18 the year before, 13 the year before that in his 3 years. I think he's going to get pushed out unless he can reinvent himself as a small medium forward that can crumb and pressure and handball it out to, the other players, because he's got a great handball, Tom Powell. I don't know where he fits in. So massive year for him. I think he plays under 10.5 games. If I'm wrong, it's either lots of injuries or he's reinvented himself, I think. I can't see him playing 11 or more games as a midfielder if everything is going well, but who knows? Look, stranger things have happened. What else do I have here? Bailey Scott averages 24.5 disposal per game. Last year it was 22.1. The year before was 18.2. I'm going to say under, and really the only reason is I don't think there's a lot of room for improvement in his game. Like, maybe he bumps that up to 23. Maybe he's getting a couple more disposals. He did start the year a little more slowly. So, if he has a couple better games to start the year, his average could be a little higher, but I don't think he goes higher than 24.5. And I think that's okay, because typically if he's getting the ball 20 odd times, he's kicking it hopefully 2/3 to 3/4 of those times, and he's launching it 40, 50, 60 metres. That's the hope, and potentially he's also carrying the ball 20 odd metres or further by foot. I think really metres gained is how we measure Bailey Scott, and obviously effectiveness of his disposal. So I think under 24.5, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's really around the quality and the metres gained that he's getting on the ball. Braden George plays 9.5 games. I mean, I have absolutely no idea with him because it's all training and it's all talk to me at this point. I know there's massive raps on him, and I think it's really hard to know what to expect from him based on what we've seen and heard so far. So I'm going to say 9.5 games under, because I don't think he starts. I think similar to Dersma, I think he's going to get some VFL time first, and based on the fact that he's been injured, he hurt himself at the end of the year and pre-season training as well. I think a great result would be him playing 10 games, but I think it's more likely that he plays 7 or 8, and it's a controlled block to see what he can do. And I hope that it's not through injury. I hope it's just through management. But yeah, we'll see. I'm going to say under 9.5. LDU averages 30.5 disposals a game. 30.5. I think it's important to put this one in context. So last year he averaged 27.4. His career average is only 21. And last year, only Tom Green, Nick Dacos, Darcy Parish, and Caleb Sarong averaged more than 30.5 disposals. So if he was going to do that, he'd be putting himself in the top 5 accumulators in the competition. I don't think he's that player. I don't think he is an absolute accumulator like Tom Green and Nick Dacos. In fact, all four of those players, they are accumulators. And they're great players, don't get me wrong. But they're part of their, appeal and their strength is the fact that they just rack up disposals. I don't think that's LDU. I think he is a quality and a strength kind of player. I think if he's getting it 28 times a game, that's a win, and we're not worrying about him racking up high 30s. So I'm going to say under. I think 28, if he averages 28 again, 27.5 again, that's a success. I don't think he pushes into the top 5 or so accumulators in the game. What I do think in terms of the next one here, LDU averages 6.5 clearances. I think it's over that. So last year he averaged 6.7. He's a 4.2 for his career, but obviously it took a long time for him to get going, and he played a lot of forward line minutes as well. I think he averages over 6.5 clearances. I think he could be in the 7s and 8s. I certainly hope he is, because he is an absolute bull in that midfield. I think he and Will Phil need to be combining for 15 clearances a game. That would be fantastic. And obviously there's going to be games that doesn't happen, but yeah, I'm going to say over 6.5 clearances for LDU. Cameron Zurhaar kicks 32.5 goals. This is a great one. I think over. Last year he only kicked 20. It was a down year for him. He kicked 20 goals from 16 games. The previous 2 years he kicked 34 and 31. So 32.5 is right on his average from those successful years. And I think it's a contract year for him. I think he'll kick more than 32.5. I think it's going to be in the high 30s, maybe even in the 40s if everything goes well. He looks super fit on the track. I don't think he's going to play heaps more midfield minutes. I don't think we need him to. I think he's good as a little burst every now and then, but I want to see him forward most of the time, and I want to see him working on his accuracy, because that was his big issue last year, is he's burned a lot of opportunities. So I think over 32.5 goals for Cam. Griffin Logue returns in round 15.5. I think it's over. I think it's really late if Griff does come back. He injured it in round 17 last year. That was early July. I think if he gets back and he can play the last 4 to 6 games, that'd be great. I'm not expecting that we will rush him back, because why would we? We're not achieving anything this year. So, yeah, I'll say over. And last player one, Eddie Ford averages 5.2 marks per game. Last year he averaged 4.7. He's good for 4.3 for his career. I don't think he goes over 5.2. I think he averages high 4s or a low 5 again. I'm going to say under for that. Marking's obviously a big part of his game. He is that half forward, high half forward marking option, and it's a great asset that he has. I think, yeah, I'm going to say under 5.2, but hopefully it's really close to that. I mean, hopefully it's higher than that, but yeah, I think I can't see him marking it more than 5.2 times per game. I think there's not going to be enough opportunity for him to do that unless he is pushing up really high and getting those, those very first outlet kicks super often. I was going to do some fun predictions now, but I think just where we're at for time, I think I'm going to wrap up the over-unders there, and I'll save those fun ones for the next episode, because I am going to do just some general season predictions and general season thoughts in next week's episode. So I'll carry over those fun over-unders, and we can get to those next episode. I don't want to go too long. So hopefully you found my over-under thoughts somewhat interesting. Sorry if you didn't, because you've listened to me ramble for probably 45 minutes or so. Like I said, I'll post all those over-unders in the North Melbourne subreddit, and I might put a few of them up on a poll on Twitter and on Spotify and so on. So feel free to get involved and tell me how wrong I am or how absolutely right I am. I prefer those ones. Yeah, feel free to get involved. Just once again, at North Pod Show on all the social media. Check my link tree in the show notes for any links. And please do rate and review the show. It really helps get it out there. And don't forget, if you want to support the show, the Buy Me a Coffee link is also in the show notes and on Linktree if you are interested. I will try to put out, or I will put out weekly episodes from here to the end of the year. So we'll do some more previewing, some more interesting stuff leading up to the season. So make sure you've subscribed so you get all those updates. And yeah, hopefully it's a really, really fun year. Hopefully you'll join me this year on North Pod. And as I said, you got any suggestions for the show for the year, for naming my player of the year, anything like that, feel free to hit me up in the comments on social media, or slide into my DMs on Twitter or Instagram. I'm happy to have a chat with any North fans. I hope that we all have a wonderful summer. Hopefully it's not too hot. I hate the heat, so if it's hot where you are, please go somewhere else. That's my suggestion. I'm always trying to avoid the heat. And I'll chat to you all in a week or so, and we'll do some more fun North Melbourne chat. Have a great week, and as always, go North. It's been a while. Thanks for listening to another episode of North Pod. If you give me a rating or review on your podcast service, that would be much appreciated. And please follow me on all social media at North Pod Show. I'm on X, or Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and I'm also very active on the North Melbourne subreddit. Hope you'll join me for the next episode.